you believe that we started recording right in the middle of 2020 with all of the COVID and lockdowns going on around us, unable to meet up? So like many a young gentleman, we turned to the internet for our entertainment. Tried to find a place where we could meet up and talk about the good, the bad, and that time that Stu saw a pelican on the canal. In order to facilitate our dreams of answering all of the big questions in film, and after a few attempts at recording via other methods to various levels of success, we found Zencastr, a super easy web-based one-stop shop for recording. Log in and you're ready to record in a matter of seconds. It doesn't take a tech genius to get high quality audio or video. And on top of that, the one time we have had an issue, the fact that the multi-layered backups are stored locally means it's easily fixed all in browser. There are plenty of tools you need when you start podcasting, so let Zencastr take that headache away as it offers a place to record, edit and distribute all from one website. Any lazy bones Jones can pick up and play and have studio quality audio or 4K video put out for the world to see when using Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code CAGEFIGHTING and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. And now, hit the music. Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man, Andy Gillard here. Hope everybody is keeping well in the world right now.
Hello everyone, Stu here. First order of magnitude, shall we say? Who did you vote for last night?
Oh, so Eurovision time. The only two that I thought were like Eurovision-y was the Italian one. I thought she actually had a good voice live, which none of the others did. And the Finnish ones were like fun. But everyone else is just dirt shit. Like I wouldn't have bothered with any of them. I think it was a really poor show. Even as someone who doesn't particularly like it, I just didn't think it was very good at all, to be honest.
I enjoyed Croatia, or Ramstein Light, as people would call them on Twitter.
Were they the pirate ones? Baby lasagna, was that?
Yeah, baby lasagna, yeah. And I was talking about on the Fancast earlier with, Pricey, like the last one as well, that was a bit like Madonna-y in a way. The Ray one.
Yeah.
Which got hardly any love at all.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, I don't think it was a classic year, but it was, I think the interaction for the 3 years in that you're now committed to watching this nonsense every year, just for fear of missing out, and don't care about all the stuff involved in giving Israel 12 points. Don't care. I quite like the song, to be fair.
It's all right. Yeah, it's one of the best out of the bad bunch.
Yeah, that Switzerland wasn't a winner for me, but there we are. But I thought, compared to all the years though, I thought actually, since this is supposed to be a film and TV podcast, I thought it was really shabby. Like there was loads of like moments of like dead air and stuff, and the links didn't quite work, and they didn't know which camera to be looking at. And considering they've been doing this all week, it was a bit bizarre.
Yeah, we've definitely seen like mockumentary films which have done exactly that, where there's, as you say, they're looking into the wrong camera or dead air, or obviously a missed cue and stuff, and it was almost a farce of a TV show, wasn't it? It was very unslick, which is not what I associate with Eurovision. So if nothing else, it is a well-oiled machine usually, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, talking of well-oiled, you could say that about the digital album members. They look very well-oiled. You said Uncanny Valley, and there was, I think it was more than that, though. It was like otherworldly.
Yeah, it was creepy. I did not like it at all. Because I think, is that what the live show looks like?
Yeah, but I think because it's the projections are there, they're projected onto glass, I think, so that they look real. So they look like that Michael Jackson thing was. So I said,
Okay.
from people who've been there and seen it, that I know, like Cheryl, she said it was incredible. Like you don't, like, obviously you know that it's not them, but after a while you're just going to get involved in the whole thing. Probably a bit like Grandma Tarkin in Rogue One. But you know it's not him. It's a digital version of him, which looks a bit shit, but it's good enough.
Does the job.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the vibe when you're there. But obviously watching a pre-recorded version of a live show of holograms makes it look worse than it probably looks in person. So, but it didn't really sell the experience to me, especially with them blocks moving up and down.
Yeah, it was all very bizarre to watch, and not a fan of this year's production in general, to be perfectly honest with you.
And
I'm sure we'll be here again in 12 months' time talking about it. It's quite funny because like every time whenever England, or is it England or is it the UK? I don't even know who enters it on our behalf.
it's the UK.
Do we go with this? Yeah, okay, we're going against the UK. I wasn't sure. Every time the UK does badly, which seems to be almost every time, everybody on Twitter is like, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong? And this year, the answer was quite simply, we've put a really bad song in with somebody who couldn't fucking sing live.
And yeah, well, there's that, and the fact that it looked like an outtake from It's a Sin. It was
He was in It's a Sin, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Because I mean, Eurovision's the gayest show in the world, which is great. That was pushing it to the limits of what's acceptable on telly. And when I was watching it, I mean, my brother-in-law's he's not very au fait with this stuff. He gets a bit squirmy in his chair, like an old man. He's 36. He's like, oh no. And then you had the guys who had like the fishnets on and the thongs earlier. I thought, yeah, you're fully embracing this. This is funny. But that was all a bit odd and bizarre. It seemed a bit like they were doing it to prove a point more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it took away from an already pretty average song. But I watched him at that countdown to the New Year program a couple of years. Was it last year or the year before? And I thought he was great. I thought he was really good.
Okay.
It was a couple of years ago because it was recasting the last one. And I thought he was a really good entertainer live, and obviously that didn't come across this time at all for Eurovision. And I thought, well, the fact that he got scores from the judges, which is what it is, and then the public gave him nothing.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the politics and all the nonsense of it, but still, he didn't deserve anything either. So,
No.
fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, you're all right. We are here to talk about film and TV and stuff. And we do have a review. So what we'll be doing this week is we'll kick off the show with the review. It's a film called A Family Affair starring Joe Wilkinson. We're then going to talk a little bit about British comedy through the years. Sort of pick like what I think might be the pillars of British comedy for each decade from like the 50s through to the modern day. We're going to do the first half today. So we'll do 60s, 70s, 80s, and then we'll be back next week where we'll talk about the more modern stuff. But we'll be starting, as I say, with a review of a film called A Family Affair, which is starring Joe Wilkinson. Stu, I know you're not massively into the panel show world of comedy. Do you know much of Joe Wilkinson before this film? He has done a little bit of acting that you've probably seen him in.
He's in Afterlife. With Ricky
Yes,
Jacks.
of course he is, yes.
And he was on that, what was that podcast that he did? He was on...
Gossip Mongers, was it?
Gossip Mongers. That's the first time I heard of him. And then obviously there was a breakdown of relationship, wasn't there, with the people involved in that. But yeah, that was the first time I heard of him. And I thought, yeah, this guy knows what... He's one of them people that he's like you with hair, really. He's so mundane and hates everything, but in a funny way.
He is excellent. I mean, I saw him in Edinburgh in probably about 2010. Yeah, I think about 2000. It must have been like one of his first couple of shows in Edinburgh. And this is going to sound like I'm slagging him off, but he doesn't have to act a lot when he's on film because he does play a version of him. Like, his stand-up character is, I think, a heightened version of himself. And that's what he brings to the camera when he's been acting in other things. Like, he's quite sardonic, I think is probably the right word for it. He does have that curmudgeon inside him as well. So I think if you like Joe Wilkinson, you'll very much get a Joe Wilkinson in whatever project that he seems to do. So you probably recognise, as you say, from Afterlife, the character isn't a million miles away in A Family Affair, is it?
No. I mean, he could have just easily gone from the postman in Afterlife to then going to run this B&B guest house. It could be the same person.
Yeah, it could have been, couldn't it? So the basis of this story is that Joe Wilkinson's character runs a B&B and he's trying his hardest to make sure that the hotel, would you call it a hotel? I mean, it's
a wellness retreat.
A wellness retreat, that's the word. He's trying to make sure that this wellness retreat is a well-oiled machine, as is his marriage, and both are slightly starting to fail in this film. It's from a director, I've got to be honest, Warren Fisher is his name. I believe he's a South African director. When I look on IMDb, he doesn't have any other credits, so I don't know if I've actually seen any of his other work. I was kind of surprised to learn that he was African, because this feels like an uber-British film to me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even his name sounds British, and you think, okay, this is, I mean, like we talked about the other week, well, it's probably about a few months ago now, when we had the All-Stars of, what was that one? What was it even called? The one about the Marrows?
Oh, Sweet Caroline.
Yeah, Sweet Caroline. It felt in the same universe as Sweet Caroline. Mm-hmm. They can quite easily have been like an anthology series of, this is this world. Because the characters were very similar to the kind of people in that. And yeah, it was the most British thing you can possibly imagine. Like when you said 5 minutes in, you were already giggling. And what was that about the soundtrack in the car with the dad?
I did laugh at that part, but it was literally the opening scene. You hear Colin Holtz, who is Joe Wilkinson's second in command, talking to these people about letting the sunlight in, and then the camera pans out, and they're like tanning their arseholes, I suppose is the best way to put it. And I did howl, and I was like, we're 30 seconds in, I've laughed. This has already got me on side. Like, you didn't need to do any more than that. I was like, yeah, you've won me over, lads, already. Brilliant.
I mean, he's in Afterlife as well. That guy, the guru, with his little samurai hair. And with him mincing around, I mean, he kind of comes into it later, doesn't he, that he probably is gay, but not that it really matters. He just adds to the chaos of it all.
It plays up to it, though, doesn't it? Yeah. I think is the point, yeah.
He's a very Kenneth Williams kind of character, as we'll come to later on. That he's, I think it works because he's so northern as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They very much lean into that, I think, because of it being quite a, like you say, it's a wellness retreat, so you know the kind of people that you're going to meet there are generally well-to-do, slightly southern, very much toffs, and I feel that Colin Holt is his name, Colin Holt and Joe Wilkinson, not being quite that mould of character. They're very much like fish out of water, but they're also not even remotely close to each other either. So there's these three distinct groups all going on at the same time, and I think you'd describe it as a farce, wouldn't you? I think that's the type of comedy it is. It's a British farce. And because it just works for me on so many levels, I've got to be honest. I wasn't sure I was going to enjoy it quite as much as I did, but I really liked it.
Because I was worried at first, because the link that we got sent was how it actually works through Vimeo. I know he's actually really good. How you can just cast it to your telly and it works fine. But it came up and I thought, well, that's a bit. It was what, hour and 16 minutes long or something like that. I thought, is there a bit missing or no? But no. It's exactly the right length that it needs to be. And I think, is it a farce? because there's bits of it. I mean, obviously, it's a really, really incredibly low budget film. You can tell that by it's not the tightest at all. Even being as short as it is, it's not the tightest by any stretch of the imagination. And it's, I mean, we can pick at it, but it doesn't even matter. Like, there's moments there where you think, yeah, this could be cut here, and you could have. This pause doesn't need to be as long, and then like the payoff of what they find in the bedroom to then plug the water leak. Just class, just genius, absolute genius. We try not to spoil it because this is one, unlike last week's nonsense. People, please go and see this film, because it's if you like this kind of stuff, you will like this film.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's not, you say it's sweet and it's got heart. It doesn't really. You've got, well, like you said, you've got the usual people there. You've got the guy who thinks he's better than he is. You've got the people who've been married for too long who hate each other. You've got the slapstick nonsense, and you've got like people's ashes, and you've got a nudist who's obsessed with being nude for no reason whatsoever compared to everyone else. And you've got the fact that the guest house itself is being auctioned off by this bell end of an auctioneer, and it's like they're just throwing all these characters in. It's almost like Little Britain in a way, in a good way.
Yeah,
where it is like one big scene. It's one big sketch of a sketch show, but it works. Mm-hmm. And I was, because I thought with that scene, whether with like a minute in where they're talking to each other in the bedroom and it's just sort of one knocked off camera, I thought, is this? I mean, it's got potential, but then after a couple of minutes, it doesn't matter, and you kind of get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you say, it's not a high budget film by any stretch of the imagination, but that doesn't take away from the fact that actually the comedy's there, and it's not like thigh-slappingly hilarious. It's stuff you'll chortle along to because you will recognise a lot of it. It's not absurdism, which I kind of appreciated. They didn't go over the top with it. Everything felt like relatively normal, but there are instances where there's something out of place within the normality, which is where the comedy comes from. And I think it was a really well-balanced film in that they didn't go too slapsticky, because I feel like stuff like this, that's an easy crutch to lean on, almost, is to go for just something that's dumb as shit. And it didn't do that. It was nice and it was happy. And it was almost Last of the Summer Wine-esque. Like, it was recognisably nice. And I really enjoyed it for that, because Last of the Summer Wine feels like something of the last generation. This felt like something that I think we could watch quite happily and get something out of it.
It feels like an extended version of like Keeping Up Appearances and One Foot in the Grave and all them kind of things, all that kind of era. And we'll come to eras later, but it's got that kind of warm. Warm is probably the word for it. Warm and recognisable. That they're characters. They're probably characters that are based on real people. That's what it seems to me. Obviously, I've been one place once where I wasn't at a wellness retreat. I was just there. I think we were at the same coach park, I think, or services with these people, and they pulled up, and there was a guy like him, not obviously with a samurai hair and as camp as him, but in that same kind of aura about him that he was giving off, or the way he speaks and the mannerisms and stuff. You think, you see these people, and like you can recognise the guy who's always on his phone, and just 1 minute, this is a wellness retreat with silence, and like everyone's seen that people, but you in the cinema every time you go. And like last week, again. But and you have got the old people, and you have got the old guy who's trying to hit on his carer. I mean, when he's leaning, I mean, this is all in the first 5 minutes of the film as well, so we're not even spoiling anything. And then he's leaning back into his car for his, what did he say? These heart pills, and they're blue. And Like something as silly as that, and he's like, his son's there, the one who runs the place, and he's walks over to him, and he's, "Oh, you're right, Daddy." He went, yeah, can I borrow your jacket? And he's there with a massive lob on. Oh, for God's sake! Like it's a regular thing that you'd see.
Yeah.
Anything? Well, yeah, it's just fun. It's just humorous. But it's not. Yeah, I think it is. It's not farce. It's warm, humorous British fun.
Absolutely. So this film is available to rent, digitally download everywhere from Monday the 20th of May. That's my birthday, so I might even watch it that day. Very much enjoyable. So yeah, make sure you get on that one. It's 2 thumbs up from me. Stu, I'm assuming you're going to recommend it to folks as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's people in this universe of the Wilkinson verse, and there is a lot of Gervais stuff in there. If you want to admit it or not, there's definitely influences on it. And if you like that stuff, then you'll love this. It's you just, as long as you go in knowing that this is not millions of pounds or the BBC budget or anything like that, and this is like clearly a passion project and a bit of a laugh for people. And the fact that it's that old school that we get the credits as well, where you get outtakes in the credits. When was the last time that happened?
I liked that. I thought that was going to be one of my questions later. It was like, yeah, but we don't get that anymore, and we really should, because they're always like a really fun addendum to the movie, especially when it's a film that's been quite fun anyway. So yeah, I did really appreciate that. So, is there any film that you would compare it to? Like, as we say, if you liked X, you might like what? Is there a film that you think if you liked that film, you'd probably get on with this one? For me, I think I would... Oh, sorry, I was going to say for me, I'd go for the film that was out earlier this year, Wicked Little Letters, the British film with Her Majesty Olivia. Oh, Christ, what's the surname? God, how on earth am I blanking on her name? Wicked Little Letters.
Coleman.
Olivia Colman. How on earth I blank on that name? Yeah, Olivia Colman and Jessie Buckley. It's a very nice, very happy, very funny, silly little film. I think that would be a good one. I think if you enjoyed that, you'd probably like, even though it's a complete different theme and setup and everything, I think if you like the humour in that, you'll probably get on with the humour in this as well. So is there anything that you would compare it to?
I mean, it's what I thought that this might be. And we kind of mentioned that it's not slapstick. It's not slapstick really. But what is slapstick is Guest House Paradiso, and I haven't seen that for a long ass time. So the way this ends and some of the things that happen in it, it makes sense if you went from this to watch Guest House Paradiso, and I think you get a lot out of both of them doing it that way around.
That would be a good double header, to be fair. I like the idea of that one. Excellent. Super. Okay, so what we're going to do next, we're going to talk about some British comedy throughout the years. Welcome back. Right, so as I said, we're going to be doing some British comedy throughout the years. Stu, originally what I started to do, I sort of picked a decade and then tried to fit something into it. But a lot of these things, they generally span several decades, so I've kind of put a few things into some kind of order of release date, but I'm sure we'll talk about stuff around it and after it and before it and everything anyway. So the first sort of pillar of British comedy that springs to my mind, where it all sort of starts from, at least modern comedy, I think you can probably trace its roots back to the Carry On films. That feels like that might be the earliest representation. I believe the first one was like 1958, I think was the first one. Now, I haven't seen all of them, and I don't know anyone who has seen all of them, to be honest, because they're quite an unruly beast, aren't they? They do seem to span a number of films and a number of genre, and they're all over the place.
I've got a feeling that Tara has seen them all.
Wow, okay, that's some doing.
I don't know why, but and you think of the way she is, that this is the kind of thing that she would not like.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got a funny feeling that she's seen all of them, and that might be confessions. And I know she's DM'd Robin Asquith before, but yeah, Carry On is. I mean, my granddad did. My granddad had them all on video. He loved them, and And that's obviously why I watched them as well back in the day. As Brit Weekly mentioned of The Thief of Baghdad, as well as videos of that, there was these Carry On video box sets that was played almost every Saturday without fail. Like you go through them one at a time before Grandstand came on and that kind of thing. So yeah, I love Carry On. This is, I mean, as we did on the Fancast where we when we got Nate on to watch Football Factory, it'd be an interesting social experiment to get an American on to watch Carry On Camping, just to see what would happen if they got it. Because I don't know, I really don't know. I don't know what the answer would be, because it's so
carry on, shit, carry on.
It's so British. Can they even relate?
Well, this is it, because like camping is a universal experience, isn't it? You know, whether you're in here, Australia, America, anywhere in the world, like people camp. But the stuff that happens in it just feels so incredibly British. Like it being Barbara Windsor, like I assume nobody knows who Barbara Windsor is outside of these four isles. Like it doesn't. I'm not being harsh there, am I? Like, she's not an international superstar and I just don't realise.
No, I mean, I've never heard an American talk about EastEnders. And
no, never.
I know obviously it's shown in Australia and Canada because they're ours. But in the same way that we got Home and Away and Neighbours, so fair's fair. But yeah, if you're talking America, I wouldn't have thought so, no. And I think this might have been one of my first pause moments, just in case. But obviously, you don't see anything.
What, the bra popping off?
Yeah. I've got a distinct memory of pausing that scene. So, obviously, when I was on my own, not with my granddad next to me.
Shows you how to do it, did he?
Yeah. But yeah, it is. I don't think any of the people in these would be known anywhere else, because they're not.
I don't think they would.
They're not.
Kenneth Williams, Joan Sims, Charles Hawtrey, potentially. Sid James, Kenneth Connor, Peter Butterworth, Hattie Jacks, Bernard Bresslaw. That name rings a bell, but I'm not sure why. But there's a couple potentials, but most of them feel like they're probably only known from Carry On or Carry On adjacent projects.
Yeah. So, I won't leave that for our American or Indian listeners. Just next week, we want responses to go and watch Carry On Camping and let us know how you got on with it, because I'm genuinely intrigued how it's going to work.
So when I was preparing for this episode, I put into ChatGPT, what are some of the trademarks of British comedy? And I'll read you like some of the highlights. So, wit and wordplay, understatement, dry humour, sarcasm and irony, absurdity and surrealism, social satire, eccentric characters, self-deprecation, and slapstick are like the 9 things that it came back with. Carry On is probably the only thing in like the list of highlights that I've put that I think probably ticks every single one of those boxes.
Yeah. I was just going to say that before you even got onto it. I said, well, ChatGPT has just described Carry On.
It has, hasn't it? It's like, don't get me wrong, it's not the most progressive comedy, because obviously it's started in the 50s and mostly ended in the 70s, I think. There are some later ones. 78, and then we had one in 1992, Carry On Columbus, which I have no idea about that one, to be honest.
Julian Clare is in there.
He feels like the perfect Carry On actor, doesn't he? But I've not heard of that one, in fairness. And Bernard Cribbins is in it. Yeah, there's a few names that I recognise, but yeah. I feel like this probably is the quintessential British comedy, or comedy series rather, because obviously there's that many of them. 31 films. I mean, that's a lot of manpower you have to put in there to get through all those.
But it is, but at the same time, like we just mentioned with the A Family Affair, in the first part that they're not really films, are they? They're more like TV specials. All of them. So they're like an hour and a half, like a 2-episode thing of Coronation Street or something like that, or 3-episode version of Coronation Street. The way they're filmed and the way that they look, they don't look like films, really. And it's not like soap opera effect or anything like that, but it's got a specific vibe to it. And obviously they're not very high budget. So what would they be making? Like 2-3 a year like Marvel films?
Pumping them out, yeah. So yeah, like 58, 59, 2 in 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. So yeah, you're looking at between 1 and 2 per year, pretty much every year from 1958 to 1978. Like a 20-year period where they pumped out 30 films is incredible.
The Carry On Cinematic Universe.
You know, it kind of would remind me of a feature-length version of Inside Number 9. Now, I know you haven't seen Inside Number 9, but I know you know the premise of it.
Yeah.
They're individual episodes with Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton. So it's the same recognisable cast. And that's what these are. These are the same. I don't think they're the same characters. They're just the same actors, aren't they?
Yeah.
But just in different places. Even one is set in Egypt. One is set in the Midwest of America. You've got them all over the world throughout history and time and everything. So yeah, it's really weird to think how popular these became because there's no through line. Because in the modern day, everything's got to be a universe. Like It would be weird to have Carry On Sergeant, Carry On Nurse, Carry On Teacher without fucking Phil Coulson appearing in every single one of them. It feels a bit bizarre to have an anthology film series in the modern day. But do you think this would work if they were to reboot it now? Just start 2024. Let's start the Carry On films again.
I mean, from that point of view, the only one I can think of is American Horror Story, where they have got the same actors doing different roles. And that works. But obviously, there's a lot of things there's nowhere near going to get past the old censors and the boards and people like that, because it is very much a better time. When people had a sense of humour and weren't scared of things, it'd be very different, wouldn't it? You'd have so many things on there. There'd be so many warnings and stuff. But can you even do that? I don't know. I mean, if you put a warning on like legacy content, would he get away with it? I've no idea. I don't know how that would work, unless it would be like a complete adults only thing. But then you ain't gonna get anywhere, or you're not gonna make your money, your small amount of money back on it. So
yeah,
I think the fact that 92, it feels like a Carry On film, but in a very loose way. And I think Rick Marley, that one. I've got it.
Let's have a look. So the cast: Jim Dale, Bernard Cribbins, Maureen Lipman, Alexis Sale, Rick Mayles in it as the Sultan, Julian Clary, Keith Allen, John Pertwee, Richard Wilson, Tony Slattery, Martin Clunes. Yeah, there's a few fairly biggish names or names that are about to become big. So yeah, I suppose 92, you've got stuff like Men Behaving Badly and whatnot just about to kick off.
Yeah. So you've got people like that, and it works as a Carry On film. But obviously, without the stalwarts, it's a bit odd. But the vibe is still, for the most part, still there. And I know a lot of people don't like that one for that reason, that it's not the original cast. But they're dead, or they're too old. So what are you going to do? I like it. I mean, I've probably watched that one way more than a lot of them. I think Carry On Abroad, Carry On the Khyber, obviously Carry On Camping as well. Then 3 with the ones that we kind of watch on repeat more than anything else. And Carry On Matron, Carry On Matron. That was the fact that it would be a catchphrase, wouldn't it? It'd be a meme, even if it's not. The fact that it still is now. Yeah. And you see the Kenneth Williams, his little lip piece or whatever it is. his little kiss to camera. He's all. I mean, the fact that that is a GIF in 2024 that still goes around every day. I don't. It's like the guy tapping his temple. Like no one knows what that's from. But he's just a GIF. Maybe that's what people think of Kenneth Williams. Like, what is this from?
You've got to imagine that probably at least 95% of people on Twitter probably don't know who Kenneth Williams is. Because, like you say, he's very British, and I imagine, a lot of people aren't going to get where that reference is from. But that GIF has gone all around the world. That is kind of crazy.
I mean, you got to think that GIF of you has gone all around the world as well.
Oh, God. He's out there somewhere. Oh, dear. I wonder if any, weird people use that to send to their friends, man. Anything about it.
Well, there's one of Greg Miller from Kind of Funny, where he's got all where he's looking into the air and he's kind of contemplating things, and there's all formulas popping up, and that was from a Kind of Funny thing, and that gets used for I think if you put confused or thinking into Giphy, that comes up, and I do wonder how many people know who either Greg Miller is or what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, the internet's a weird fucking place when you think about it, isn't it? So, any other particular favourites? I don't know why, but Cabby, for me, I've got this really strange memory of being probably about 11 years old, maybe even younger than 11, and we camped out in one of our friends' back garden. I had one of those little small portable TVs you could have. You know, the handheld ones that were effectively the same size as a Game Boy. I had one of those that tuned in, and we found Carry On Cabby was on at 1 a.m. and we were quite young and probably should have been fast asleep by that point. So I've got recollections of watching that on this tiny little TV monitor in my friend's back garden, surrounded by the stars. It's just such a weird memory, but yeah, Cabby for me stands out. I don't know. That's the only reason why, because I couldn't tell you anything else about that film. Maybe Cowboy as well rings a bell. There's a few scenes in that just stick to my memory.
We Follow That Camel. That was another one, but that's not even called Carry On. Weirdly enough,
it's odd, isn't it? The only one that.
No, there's the other one. The one it's based on. It's a sequel to
Don't Your Head.
Yeah. And Carry On Emmanuel, I don't think I've ever seen.
No,
obviously it's Emmanuel and the many sequels of Emmanuel, for obvious reasons, but not that one.
So if they were to reboot it tomorrow, are there any actors, comedians, anybody in particular who you think would fit this world? I feel like Joe Wilkinson, who we just spoke about, would actually be a really good addition to this world.
Yeah. Well, the both of them who we just talked about, you throw them straight into this. Yeah.
Colin Holt, he's the modern day Kenneth Williams in his, these mannerisms. I think he would fit that campus teacher role perfectly, actually. I think he'd be really good at it. And also, I think you've got Joe Wilkinson's mate from Gossip Mongers, who was in Cemetery Junction with him. Oh, you haven't seen Cemetery Junction, have you, Shit?
No.
No, so it is. It's another name that I have completely blanked on. I'll edit this bit out because
Hattie something.
David Earl.
David Earl, yes.
So you'll know him from the Gossip Mongers podcast. I think they now do another podcast, but I haven't listened to that. I've got to be honest. He's quite well known as playing other characters, but he's very good in that, and he's great in a film, Brian and Charles. So he plays Brian Gittins. He's probably his most famous character, and Brian and Charles, he plays this character Brian Gittins, and I can't remember if he finds or if he builds his own robot friend. I think it was the BAFTAs. They went to the BAFTAs, both him and his robot friend. And his robot friend's like fucking 7'6" tall, got a big square chest, and he's just weird as shit. But it's a really good film. I think you'd enjoy that. It's very much like, a family affair in that it's not thigh-slappingly funny, but it makes you happy. And that's the kind of film it is. I think you'd get a lot out of that, to be fair, Stu.
Oh, who's the guy? You know, them Christmas films that we watched from Amazon? Daniel Mays.
Yeah, I like Daniel Mays. Yeah.
Yeah,
he would be the star of it. He's the most normal one out of all of them, so he'd be the perfect one to base it all around.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, British TV, throw Toby Jones in, why not? You need someone older.
Yes. Yeah, Toby Jones. I feel like Ramesh Ranganathan would probably be a good fit as well. Again, quite a miserable fucker, and he'd fit quite well into this world. Roisin Connaughton, Greg Davies. I do think there's some really strong, people who are probably known mostly for stand-up, but also do quite a bit of acting now and have gone on to do some really fun stuff on TV. I mean, pretty much any Greg Davies' TV series, Mando, love that. Season 1, when Rick Mayall's still in it. Excellent. Absolutely love that show. So moving on then from the first, let's go to, I've got it penned in as the 60s, but it probably went on most of the 70s as well. Monty Python's. We did sort of briefly talk about this, when Matt was, still with us.
He's still alive.
Yeah, when Matt was on, I think he was cleansing his soul when he was telling us that he doesn't particularly get Monty Python. But I'd argue it's probably the most influential television show on British comedy of, probably all time. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's totally fair. I think it's... Whereas Carry On was very mainstream, Monty Python was mental and edgy for its time, and just a bit weird. Because if you look at it, I mean, my mum hates it. Mum hates Monty Python.
Okay.
She never liked it. I mean, whenever it was on, me and Dad would watch it, and she'd walk out of the room. She can't stand it. Which, where you think? I mean, to be fair to her, after making her watch Saltburn, she don't trust me anymore, which is fine. But I said, "Oh, you need to watch Bullet Train. It's hilarious," which it is. She lasted about 25 minutes in and gave up. So I couldn't understand what was going on. So, yeah, that's the point. You get to it later. But no, she didn't like Bullet Train, and she didn't like Saltburn, and she didn't like Monty Python either. But it seems like the only one that has kind of transferred everywhere, because you even hear it now. I mean, like the clip I sent you earlier on Sacred Symbols. I mean, there's a guy on there, Chris Maldonado, and he's 30, I think, from New York. And he's a bit of a internet celebrity stand-up kind of guy.
Yeah.
They've got the Snark Tank podcast. There's their plug and whatever. But he's funny, and he's one of his influences is Monty Python. And they will, when they're talking in the British voice, governor, and all the kind of the expected Dick Van Dyke Cockney accent. But it's all based around Monty Python. You think, how is this show that's so old now still a mainstream to people in their 30s in New York? It doesn't really make any sense when nothing else really crosses the pond quite like that does.
That is quite surprising. Like, I couldn't imagine the Goodies probably making much of a statement in the US, and that sort of feels like the closest comparison from that period of time. I think. I know it's obviously slightly different in that it wasn't a sketch show, but I think from what I gather, like from talking to my mom and stuff, you were either a Goodies fan or you were a Pythons fan, I think was how it worked, generally speaking. I mean, personally, I remember when the Goodies sort of came back when Dave TV or Gold or whatever it was when it first started up. The Goodies was one of the first shows that they put on there late night, and that was a bit weird and a bit, out there especially for someone of my age at that time that hadn't seen anything like it. But I very much think Pythons was infinitely better than the Goodies.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all. The Goodies, it was almost like it was too childish, maybe. I don't know. It was. I never vibed with it, but in a similar kind of way, I suppose. It was one of them where it was hardly ever on either.
Yeah,
it was never part of in Monty Python was on all the time. Flying Circus was on all the time on repeats. But we only had 4 channels, then 5. So maybe it's just that kind of overexposure to it that we had nothing else.
Yeah,
when things finish, I'll put a Monty Python's Flying Circus on. Why not? Nothing makes any sense anyway, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be in order. And I think that's why it worked for me anyway, more than anything else. My dad liked it, so it was indoctrinated into me.
So Monty Python started in 1968. A show that started at the same time that I think the BBC does or did the exact same thing with what I remember. Whenever there was a break in programming, there'd be an episode of Dad's Army. Like, that feels like it's the anti-Flying Circus almost, because it's so straight, I mean, not straight-laced in that it's dull, because actually it is quite funny. I don't think I appreciated it as much because when I was younger and this was so old, but actually watching some of it now, you do realise this is a lot better. The writing on it's a lot better than I gave it credit for as a kid. But it's almost the exact opposite to Monty Python's Flying Circus, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the most mainstream thing you can possibly have. Look, straight down the middle. You're not going to offend anyone. It's nice, family, light-hearted fun. Based on something that, how many years removed? 30 years removed at that point?
Yeah. So yeah, nearly 30.
Yeah, so enough time had passed before it being insensitive. I mean, that's probably wasn't a thing then anyway. Again, better times. But I was the same. It used to be on a Friday night. I remember when we used to go around my nan's house. And it used to be on a Friday. And then sometimes it was on a Saturday when, like, after Casualty or something like that. And I never got it back then either. It was like, well, why would I watch this old program about old people dressing up in war stuff? I don't get it. No idea. And it was on until, 20s maybe, my early 20s, where it was repeated again, probably on Dave, from the start. And I watched it all, and you got all the Duntelling Pike and all that stuff. And there's certain things that are just, they're not memes, they're just British culture more than anything else.
That is Del Boy falling through the table, isn't it? It's that level of part of the British psyche, I think. Duntelling Pike. It's incredible, and it is a genuinely hilarious moment that you'd probably not even consider now, because we've moved on. We've told that joke a million times since that you probably don't think about it in the same light. But I could imagine back in the day that would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
But I completely agree. Look, I don't think it was probably, I remember watching, there was nothing on TV and the Dad's Army film was on, the original one, not the 2016 one. So this probably would have been, I'd probably been late 20s. So watch the Dad's Army film that I didn't even know was a thing. I didn't know that it was a film way back when. And all shit. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually laughing at a Dad's Army thing. And then I revisited the show and I was like, yeah, I didn't give this its flowers when it deserved them, because it is a good show. Did you see the 2016 film, the Toby Jones one?
No.
I didn't.
It was one of them where I knew that I'd get angry. I knew I'd be comparing it, so what's the point? It's what I always say about remakes. I mean, their remakes are not for us. The remakes are not for fans of the original stuff on the whole. This was bringing back Dad's Army for a whole new generation of people, and I was thankfully part of the old generation who remembered the original. So I had no need to watch it. And I don't even know if it's the same characters or it's just the same idea. I don't know. I've no idea.
I believe it's the same characters. But it's very strange, because I can't imagine the generation that came after us would think twice about Dad's Army. So I don't know who you're bringing it back for, because, 2016 would have been, 33? Yeah, it would have been 33. So if you're going to be bringing it in for 20-somethings, I don't think they're going to be interested. such a weird one. I don't, if I remember right, I don't think he did particularly well. I think he got, semi-okay reviews from, these British-based critics, but it feels like that's always on to a loser for me, bringing it back, because it's so of its times. I don't know anyone else who'd give a shit if they're not old fuckers like us.
I mean, the only time I could think it makes sense in a way was if you based it, if you'd kind of jumped on the World War II bandwagon again, where you had Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers and the Medal of Honor games and all that stuff, and where World War II was a big thing again. If you'd released it then to kind of cash in, which is what the film is in the first place, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If they'd released it around then I could understand it. But what was happening with World War II in 2016? I can't remember. I don't know. I just remember thinking this is an odd one. See, while like the A-Team film, which is genuinely good, but again, that was more going watching that out of curiosity more than anything else, because obviously it sounds hypocritical saying it because it's the same characters and all the same thing, but they were characters that you could see being modernised, where you can't modernise people who've already set in the same time period. Bizarre.
That's it. Unless you're making this about the Iraq War, for example.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It doesn't really make any sense, does it? It's a bit of a bizarre one. But going back to Monty Python's then, any particular favourite films of the Monty Python? So look, there's the 3 films, isn't there? So you've got Holy Grail, Life of Brian, and Meaning of Life. I know now for something completely different. I think they're released in the cinemas, but that's just an extended version of the sketch show, isn't it? If I remember right, it's just sketches in it. But so the 3 main films, favourite?
I don't know if I can even choose one, because they're all excellent in their own right. I mean, you've got the whole "it's only a flesh wound" thing for Holy Grail, and it's
Matt's just wincing at us. We're just going to quote things, aren't we? Now, Matt's so annoyed.
It's again, these are gifts. They're gifts that happen, and the knights who say nay. It's fucking stupid. It shouldn't work, but it still does. At a push, I'd probably say Holy Grail, because I was more into that kind of the oldie worldy stuff. I mean, I kind of still am with the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, but yeah, I'd probably say Holy Grail. Obviously, Life of Brian. Life of Brian is the premise of it in the first place, of a guy born in the stable next to Jesus. So, well, again, who, other than the copious amount of drugs that they obviously were taking at the time, you wouldn't come up with that kind of idea, would you? You just wouldn't.
No.
Even not back then, anyway.
I think I agree with you. I think Holy Grail is probably the best film. I mean, even small little things like the fact they couldn't afford horses, so they got someone with the coconuts to do the clunk, the clunk, the clunk. Because little things like that, it's his comedic genius to lean into the shitness of how little money they had. I think there's such an inventive, such a clever way to have made a film. I do think it is brilliant. Life of Brian is probably the most iconic of the 3, though, purely because it fucking riled up the Catholic Church. I think if you're going to piss the Catholics off, you're always going to be onto something of a winner. Dogma did it, and a lot of films do it, and it never works out well for the Catholics, I've noticed. They get angry about it, and that just means more people end up seeing it, so it kind of blows up in their face a little bit. So I think for that reason it is the most iconic. It does have the song, doesn't it? When people think of Monty Python's, they think of Always Look on the Bright Side of Life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Holy Grail is my favourite. As much as I love The Meaning of Life as well. Like, there's some really good... Every Sperm is Sacred. Such a great song. It always makes me smile whenever I hear that one. And there's the scene where the teacher is showing the pupils sex education and he's banging his wife in front of them and silly little things like that. It's a silly, funny film. I just don't think it's got the legs the other 2 have. But yeah, Holy Grail for me is the one.
I mean, without Monty Python, you don't get Cannibal the Musical, you don't get Basketball, you don't get South Park.
No, that's a very good point. South Park is the Americanization of it almost. I feel like that's where it leads to, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you can see that, was it Terry Jones who did the animations for Python? You can see his influence directly on Matt and Trey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it is I think it is the most influential. And you can see Monty Python's then sort of moves on. If we move on to what I've got down for the 80s, sort of, I've got Blackadder versus Young Ones. And I feel like you can see Python's in both of those. And then they go on to influence so many other people on both sides of the argument. So let's start with Blackadder first. You a Blackadder fan, Stu?
Yeah. Goes forth more than the others. I like goes forth. I don't know why. But again, the whole idea that there's always a Baldric and there's always a Blackadder, this regardless of time period. Again, a genius idea.
Yeah.
Like it's endless. You can just do it whatever time period you want. And I think, unfortunately, we were probably too young to appreciate it properly. And if there's one of them to go back to and watch again, it would be Blackadder, because I was watching Blackadder in my teens, and you're not getting the value out of it at that time, really. And obviously, I've seen it, the odd one or two here and there since, but not from start to finish. But yeah, it's not absurdist, but it's not a farce either, is it? It's something else.
I do feel like it has elements of absurdism because of Baldric. Baldric is the wise, isn't it, when it comes to it? But you are right. Like it's not flat out absurdism. It's not wacky comedy. It's not silly comedy. It's sort of grown up. It almost feels like it's grown up through the eyes of a child.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. It's like what a child would see an adult to be. Kind of feels like Rowan Atkinson's Edmund Blackadder. Yeah,
I mean, you look at this, and then the stuff that we didn't even mention, like Yes Minister and stuff like that. I don't get that. It's not our time, is it? So it might be hilarious, it might be brilliant, but that seems so po-faced and middle class that it's not going to be funny for us. Not now.
Yeah, I've definitely passed me by that one. Like I've got no frame of reference for anything with it. So like it's never been one on the list to even consider going back to.
And you can talk about Ted Heath all you want, but it makes no difference to me. It's like, well, I don't know what that means. So, and you think, even like some of the references in Love Thy Neighbour, obviously that's problematic anyway. It shouldn't. I mean, Love Thy Neighbour should not be problematic if we're being sensible, if we're being fair. Because if you actually watch that show, well, you have to go some to watch it because it's banned. But if you watch it, both sides give as good as they get. And there's nothing racist about that program other than the people being racist to each other, but they're best friends.
Yeah.
So it's like one of them things. It's a victim of circumstance, that is. But there's references in that of the time about politics that you just got no idea what it means. So half the show is lost. I mean, you can laugh at the absurdity of it all, but whereas Blackadder, which is a very grown-up show, still works, even though we've got no reference points, because there is none of that stuff, really.
Well, this is it, because they're making jokes about stuff that was probably like their parents' generation when it comes to the war. Or, I mean, obviously they go back to, it's not Regency, is it? It's Tudor times, is it? Blackadder the Third. Yeah. So they're making jokes in a period of time that's so far removed from their own lives at that point that actually the comedy is just comedy rather than it being time specific. I think that's why people even today still really like that show.
When you talk to people, I mean, Yes Minister just popped into my head. I hadn't even thought. I mean, I probably haven't thought about that for about 40 years since I was a small fetus. And you see it on the things, and you see is it The New Statesman? Is that the one with
Rick?
With Rick Martin.
Again, Alan Bastard, which I think is a fucking funny character.
Yeah. we're too young to understand it, really. It's not that kind of... It's good, but we're limited with it.
Yeah.
And this is just us being 40 years old and not 50 or 60. That's... But again, it's one of them where a lot of people don't like them things. They don't like that stuff. I can't think of any person ever that I've ever met who does not like Blackadder, or at least one of them.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, I know Ash Dolan. I know he's a big fan of Blackadder. I think it's one of his favourite, like, British sitcoms. Yeah, there are people who got a lot of fans of that work. I think because of its timeless nature. We'll come back to Blackadder because I want to talk about Rowan Atkinson in a minute. But the timeless nature of Blackadder versus the young ones, which is very, very of its time. Now, I still like it because I sort of get the references, not massively because I haven't got the year that one was released, but obviously I was very young then. As for yourself, does the young ones have the rewatchability of Blackadder, do you think?
You couldn't give someone under 25 the young ones. It wouldn't work. I mean, you'd watch it and then you'd have to do a lot of homework and then watch it again to get it. I think we were probably maybe just taking things in by osmosis with a lot of that stuff, the Alexis Hale things especially. But on the other point, though, it is ridiculous and absurd. So, and it is the starting point of what comes after it. So, from that point of view, you get it, and it's funny, and the whole Vivian stuff, and like the ridiculous slapstick violence of it all. That is always going to be funny.
Yeah,
and the fact that you've got the tough, and you've got the ones who are just there who want to study, and then you've got the anarchists, but it is very 80s. And the further away from the 80s we get, it's going to be more and more difficult for people to get into it because it's as much of a product of its time as Yes Minister is.
Yeah, because obviously I know it's about students in that particular period of time, and I think most people can recognise what it was like to be a student, being the anarchist or the hippie or the pretentious dickhead, which some of us never grow out of. Like, you do you can recognise it, but at the same time, when you compare the budget to Blackadder, it looks very shoddy. Well, there's no two ways around it. You can't get around the fact that it is a very, very poor-looking thing when you compare the two. And I do think if you came to these two shows with fresh eyes, you would struggle to watch the young ones now. I really do think you would. And I don't know if it's my love of Bottom, the show.
Yeah.
My love of Bottom that sort of pushed me through to watching the young one. I don't know, because Bottom very much came first for me when it come to, I mean, it was Red Dwarf and Bottom, I think, were my shows when I was growing up. So I feel like Bottom is the linchpin to the Rick and Aid-verse almost. Everything revolves around that show when it came to them. So I think that probably helps me get through the young ones. I know you're a big fan of Bottom, the show again. Have you seen the documentary that Dave did a couple of 3 weeks back?
No, not yet. For reasons that I know it's going to make me cry.
Yeah.
After, we talked about it on the Fancast earlier for people who double dip, but the Wolves video that they put out on Friday, was just incredible. And after watching that, and you think, okay, you're already on the brink. And you watch Clarkson's Farm, episode 4, season 3, episode 4 with the pigs. It's already bad enough. You can't be getting tearful about something of losing an actual legend, however much it celebrates him, which is obviously great. I will get round to it. And whenever you see him talking about him and that he's obviously misses him and they're part of each other's lives for so long, and then that happens to him, and it's like, well, it's just not fair. And the fact that we get it every year around his birthday, and Rick Mail trends on Twitter every single year without fail. Then you always get Americans jumping in, say, "Who is this?" Then you send them clips and like, yeah, you just don't get it.
Yeah, like I love the story of him crashing somebody's wedding and like making jokes about the best man being a bastard and all these things. And it's just, it's my favourite day of the year on Twitter because Twitter is such a fucking cesspool at the best of times. That Rick Mayall's birthday is the best day of the year on Twitter because people just share stories about this, what seems to be like a really nice human being. And it's just wonderful. And there's not enough of that in the world, I don't think. But yeah. The documentary's great. It's really nice and happy. And they do talk about, towards the end, they weren't particularly close and how that affected Aid. But you've got to watch it. And the Aid Edmondson was on Desert Island Discs, the BBC.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, that I was fucking bawling my eyes out at that one when he was talking about it on there as well. Very emotional. Yeah, definitely watch it when you get a chance. So, as I said, I want to talk about Rowan Atkinson. Where do you stand on his non-Blackadder work?
Matt's not here to talk about it, is it? So you can talk about the obviously you're talking about Johnny English here, and that's I like Rowan Atkinson a lot. Johnny English is 2000s, isn't it? So we can't really talk about it in this part. But it's in essence, it's of this time, really. It's stupid. He knows what it is.
He hasn't moved on, has he? All of his shtick is... At least it's not even Blackadder. All of his shtick is Bean, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're all variations of that idiot. Which is a shame because I feel like Blackadder is so much better, and for a whole generation, he's going to be Mr. Bean. I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
The fact that Mr. Bean is an animated show as well. And
have your kids seen it? The animated show? I've never seen it, so I don't know what it's.
Yeah, then neither of them have cared. Now, Corey's probably a bit young, but Ethan never bothered.
Mm-hmm.
I love Mr. Bean. I love the film I've talked about before, where we went and he broke our way through and all that stuff. But it's just like all of this stuff. It's like a natural evolution where you're almost going backwards in a way, where it's so absurd, yet you know someone like this. And not all the stuff obviously happens to them, but some of this stuff is relatable. Like things like leaving stuff on top of a car, on the roof of the car when you get in, stuff like that. Just simple things that are so stupid that you think, well, surely this is not possible. But other than where he's on that chair on top of his car driving with a string, obviously that's a bit much. And his feud with the three-wheeler and things like that. It's just silly. And it kind of fills the void of silliness where you don't need anything else when you're watching Mr. Bean. It's just, you put it on. Admittedly, I haven't done it for years at this point. But I know if it comes on, I'm going to giggle at it. Because it's silly, and that's the only word for it. It knows what it is. It doesn't try to be anything else. It's got that thing with that woman who is constantly trying to woo, who doesn't really talk either. And the whole teddy bear thing, and it's all quite sweet, and he's obviously a bit troubled in the head in the modern terms. You know, it reminds me of Kev Wolf in a way.
That's a niche reference to anyone outside of Wolverhampton.
This is why you don't like Mr. Bean. It's the truth has been discovered. But he's Kev Wolf, and he's a simple man that stupid things happen to. So he's a mixture of superhuman and Kev Wolf off Twitter.
Oh dear. Yeah, I don't get it. I just don't see the humour in it. It's too silly for me. I just don't chime with it in the slightest, which is weird because I thought, well, is it a silent thing? But I don't think it is because I like Charlie Chaplin's films. Obviously, they're very, very of their time and you have to watch it through that lens. But I don't feel like that type of humour can be done now. I just don't think it works. I mean, this is the 90s as well, so we're talking 30 odd years ago at this point, and I think I didn't like the first episode, and then I think I watched a couple after it, but it was just not for me. And the films did nothing for me either, and I know that both you and Matt love it. I wish I could like it even a quarter of as much as you two do, but it does nothing for me, and it's kind of sullied everything that Rowan Atkinson does now. Because I just think he's a fucking idiot. And like even when he rocks up in Love Actually, and he's playing the not concierge, the help desk rapper, and he thought the worst part of that film. And it is a bad film, so to be that bad in that film, it's the worst.
You're going to get attacked now. People love that film.
Yeah, some people really love that film, and I don't know why. Like, I remember going with like a couple of mates to see it, and like he was one guy and one girl I was at uni with, and went to see, and the guy started to cry halfway through, which was funnier than the film, to be honest. Even from me, who cries at fucking everything, I did laugh at it, crying in public in the cinema.
You know, I had only watched it a couple of years ago, like I talked about on the podcast at the time, and I don't get the over the top loving for it. Well, it was enjoyable enough.
Yeah,
but it's it's like The Holiday. It's a nice Christmas film. That's it. It's nothing magical. But there we are. But it's not Mr. Bean either, which is infinitely better.
So obviously we were talking sort of about the 80s-ish. A couple of other shows in the 80s. I mentioned Red Dwarf. Stu, I'm sure we've had a conversation. You're a dwarfer as well, aren't you? Like, it feels like it would be your show. It's sci-fi and comedy, and ticks both of those boxes, doesn't it?
Well, I put that video of the four of them dancing on the stage at Comic-Con in Limerick.
Yes.
In the
day. Yeah. Lovely stuff. Maid Marian and Her Merry Men. Do you remember that? Obviously, that's Baldrich going on and doing something else. I used to love that show. Danny John Jules is in it as well. Do you remember?
Yeah, vaguely. I never really watched it. It was one of them things that was on.
It was on BBC or CBBC, as it was when you had Andy Crane in the cupboard. And my favourite time was when they used to have Maid Marian on, but I just remember constantly waiting for that show to be on, even when it must have been mid-season, and I was too young to understand that they were making the show because it needed to be there. Yeah, that. I suppose the other big hitter of the 80s that went on for far too fucking long, Only Fools and Horses.
This is probably... You're not British, that's why.
I am British, Stu.
Just hasn't got a bulldog tattoo. That's his problem.
I hate that show. It's such low quality, low hanging fruit nonsense.
It's the same. It's the same thing as, I think, like I've said it before about Phoenix Nights, and Peter Kay. If you're not brought up in that world, you will never get it. You'll never get it because it's almost like situational. Maybe, obviously that's the name of a sitcom. It's very much situational comedy, and growing up in working men's clubs and football clubs and stuff like that, you know people, and you know people who are dodgy like these guys are, and who can get you anything you want, and if you get it off them, it's normally going to be shit. So, and then they're kind of the universe around them of the dodgy people that they know as well. Like, we had a guy. There was a guy in the Jolly Collier down the road who was called Chainsaw. That was his name because he had a chainsaw, and he was only his mom. His mom died and left him a shitload of money, so he didn't have to work anymore. And he bought a chainsaw, and that's all he did because he didn't have to work. So whenever the trees at the back of the beer garden needed chopping down, they'd get Cheney on it. And that was his whole thing but he was weird, and he used to come in every day like Mr. Ben in a different costume. Like he had a dress up box. And this guy was like in his 50s. And but it's like shaped like Gary O'Neill, like really thin and slender, like Slender Man, crossed with Mr. Ben, and his name was Cheney. I don't know what his real name was. I never knew what his real name was. But when he died a few years ago, there was 300 people there. Like everyone knew him. Like, he's like one of them people. Like you live in Clubland, you die in Clubland, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what Only Fools and Horses is. That if you round that kind of dodgy geezer and all that kind of stuff, you get a lot more out of it than you think. Well, these are just morons, and none of this is funny because you got no background to it. I think that's a lot of the thing with Phoenix Lights as well. Skip into that because if you look at it and you think, oh, he's like the guy with the fight that he's drawing a dog and all that stuff. You think, yeah, because you'd have people coming in doing fire safety and all that kind of nonsense, and it's very of the like the whole Peter Kay stick, the whole stick about him. Oh, do you remember like the member berries and all that kind of thing? It works for a certain demographic of people. But you have to be invested in it. And if you're not, you're never going to get it. And I think that's why you don't like Only Fools and Horses, because you weren't necessarily in that kind of world.
It's just so broad. Like, it's the broadest show that I think has ever been put on TV. He tries to make everyone happy, which isn't a bad thing, but it's a fucking boring thing. Like, I still like something that's a little bit more specific, I think, with its humour. And that just isn't it in the slightest. And that's why I don't like it.
I can give you a broader one.
Go on.
Mrs. Brown's Boys.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Only Fools and Horses is the 1980s Mrs. Brown's Boys. It's. I mean, I really think it's better than that. It is better than Brown's Boys because that is the absolute fucking steaming heap of diarrhea. Like, I don't understand how that's on television and gets such good numbers and had a fucking spin-off film. Just unbelievable. I've not watched the film, obviously. I'm not a fucking maniac. But yeah, I just don't get it. I couldn't tell you where that comes from. You're going to tell me you like it now, aren't you, Stu?
Relatability, that's what it is. And it's the Avatar issue again. It's the silent majority of people that don't live online, don't talk about everything every day. They just go to work, come home, watch telly, watch Gogglebox, which I don't understand Gogglebox. Never have. Don't get it.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's massive. People enjoy it. Fair play. And I think because it is so easy to watch, and because it seems like a throwaway of a distant past, of the good days, I think that is where that comes from. And to be fair, I watched the first series of Mrs. Brown's Boys and I did enjoy it. And I went with my mum to watch it live at the Civic before the Civic got closed down. And it was piss funny. But then when it came back, I think if that was the first or even the second series, there was a significant jump where it was going from niche stuff to when it was on BBC One in England. There was a very different change in it where it went from being this weird Irish thing, probably like Father Ted. We'll get to the 90s later, but a bit like Father Ted, how it was imported, really. It wasn't made for us here in Wolverhampton. It was imported. That's what Mrs. Brown's Boys season 1 was for me. It might have been 2 as well, but the early ones were, regardless, were funny, and I enjoyed them, and I enjoyed the live show. And then something changed, and it didn't feel the same anymore. And that is what it's like now, because I like when I watch the Christmas specials and stuff, when I've been on like around there at Christmas, whatever, the festive period, and it's not the same. It's not the same show. It's different now, and they have broadened it out. So is that a problem? It's clearly not a problem for the people who love it, but you ain't going to get new people in doing that. But they don't care, do they? Because they've got their audience.
I'm sure I heard, like, it wasn't this Christmas, was it, where they had a Christmas special, but it might have been last Christmas, that it got something like 12 million viewers. Like, it was like the best viewed thing of the day on BBC. Which it definitely has its audience. But fucked if I know anybody who watches it. It's, it's something else. Mm-hmm. Right, so I think we'll leave it there for this week. So we're up to the 80s. We'll come back next week where we'll pick up. We'll do 90s, noughties, and the 10s. Probably not worth talking about the 20s because it's still so early in the decade. We'll talk about that in 6.5 years' time.
Matt might be back then.
He might be back then, yeah. Might bring Rory with him as well. So yeah, we'll be back next week. We sort of. This is news to you at the moment as well, Stu. So at the minute, we're sort of doing, we're thinking of doing this throwback series. Like we watched Neverending Story a couple of weeks, or last month. This week, we're going to do another throwback to a film. And Stu, I said Drop Dead Fred. Would you rather do Drop Dead Fred or Guest House Paradiso?
I
haven't seen either. I've seen Drop Dead Fred probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I haven't seen Guest House Paradiso probably since it was released on VHS.
Okay. Well, yeah, because then it bridges the gap to bottom and it's relevant then. Okay, we'll do Guest House Paradiso next week.
Yeah, it's got to be out there somewhere. We do have another film that we need to review that I'd completely forgot about until about 20 minutes ago. We'll be reviewing a film called The Present, which will be released in the UK cinemas on the 24th of May. Okay, so yeah, we'll do Guest House Paradiso next week. We will talk about some 90s, noughties and teen comedy, and then we will be reviewing that other film called The Present. But yeah, please make sure to remember that A Family Affair is out to buy digitally from the 20th of May. As I said before, it's got 4 thumbs up from the two of us, so make sure you check that one out. Please make sure you subscribe to whatever podcatcher that it is that you've listened to us on, and a 5-star review would be phenomenal. For this week, Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Yeah, goodbye, everyone. Keep laughing.
And it's goodbye from me, and remember, be excellent to each other.